What do you do when the day you've been waiting for your whole life turns out to be the day you really realize what it means to be alone? This isn't a story about getting back at someone. This is not a tale of revenge or a happily ever after. This tale revolves around the act of causing harm and the subsequent decision to make amends. The story revolves around the experience of being abandoned at the altar and the subsequent struggle to rise above it. This story is for you if you've ever loved someone who left you without warning, or if you've ever doubted your worth because someone else didn't see it. Sometimes you are the person you need to learn to love again. And occasionally the strongest thing you can do is let go of love. That morning I woke up with a smile that came before I remembered. For a little while the world was still innocent. The heaviness in my chest had not yet returned, and my prospects for the day were bright. Then a profound realization struck me. Today was the day I got married. I had envisioned this day since my childhood when I dressed in pillowcases as veils and invited my stuffed animals to my fanciful wedding. The sunshine painted lines on the walls as I sat up in bed. It felt holy. It was as peaceful as the silence before a beautiful storm. My dress, which was ivory satin and had no sleeves, hung in the corner like a promise. I recall brushing my fingertips over it the night before and repeating my vows in the dark, while I practiced how I would look at him when I said, "Forever." I had arranged everything, even the ribbon on the last chair. The florist brought me blush roses and eucalyptus just like I had hoped. I anticipated the string quartet playing "Can't Help Falling in Love" as I walked down the aisle. Even the weather had cooperated. It was a crisp spring morning that smelled like new beginnings. This is the kind of morning that makes you believe miracles are real. My ladies were already up and chattering and laughing in the room next door. The sound of a curling iron opening and closing filled the room. The aroma of coffee and excitement filled the room. Someone played gentle acoustic love songs that stirred my heart in the most beautiful way. My mom looked into the room with tears in her eyes. She didn't say anything at all. She just looked at me like she saw the little girl in the princess dress again. I smiled at her. My heart was light. I believed I was beginning the life I had always desired. Unbeknownst to me and unknown to all of us was the imminent arrival of a tranquility that would remain with me forever. Things can change shortly, even forever. Nobody ever teaches you how to return to a path you never took in the first place. But at that moment, that silent, hallowed moment, I was just a woman in love ready to say yes forever. My phone buzzed once. Only once. I snatched it up, half expecting a message from him, maybe a lovely note before the wedding. He might have been caught in traffic or needed help putting on his cufflinks. A little something. Something that can be fixed. But that wasn't it. The text made me feel as if I were experiencing a car collision in slow motion. I can still hear every word. "I can't do this. I'm sorry." At first, I didn't think it was true. I thought it was a joke. A mistake. The number doesn't match the correct one. I was waiting for a response with my fingers over the screen. I eagerly anticipated the conclusion of the jest. I was waiting for him to say, "Just kidding. I love you. See you soon." But nothing happened. There was no phone call. There was no explanation provided, that's all. "Be quiet." I read it again, and again, and again. My hands began to shake. I couldn't breathe because I was either crying or screaming, like petals folding in my bridesmaids gathered around me to protect me from the blow. One of them picked up the phone. I didn't let go. I couldn't. It seemed like the last part of him I had. The room around me moved very slowly. Voices got mixed up. The cosmetics artist let go of a brush. A glass of water fell over. I heard my mom repeatedly say, "No, no, no," as if she had broken a prayer. Then my knees gave out. Not exactly. I didn't pass out. However, I crumbled as though someone had drained me of my vitality. Just in time, my best friend caught me and held me akin to embracing a toddler after a bad dream. And the worst part? People were already there. The chairs were ready. The altar was ready. The photographer was snapping shots of aisles that were empty. And there I was alone in a wedding suite full of flowers. I was stuck. Couldn't weep. I couldn't stop looking at just one message. I believed that if I reread it numerous times, it could undergo a transformation. There was never a ceremony. The music never started. But the chapel stayed ready for a wedding that never happened. Every ribbon, every petal, and every row of candles was waiting for something that was already dead. I went back there the next day. By myself. I don't know what. I could have thought I could get it back and comprehend it. But all I felt was the pain of an echo. I was in the front row looking at the altar where I should have been. The quiet was so loud. There is a kind of silence that doesn't bring tranquility. It brings shock, with sadness. It wraps around you like fog, and you can't see through it. I slipped into bed in my dress when I arrived home. I can still hear the zipper coming down slowly and unwillingly as if the dress didn't want to give up. I covered myself with blankets and cried without making a sound. Only tears. The tears never cease. 3 days went by. I didn't have anything to eat. I didn't say anything. I let my phone die even though it kept buzzing. People brought flowers and left them. My sister tried to get me to chuckle. My mom sat quietly on the edge of my bed and held my hand just the way she used to when I had terrible dreams as a kid. But this wasn't a bad dream. This was real, and no one could get to the empty part of me. I wasn't just sad about a man. I was sad about the life I had already lived in my head. I spent Sunday mornings making pancakes in a shared kitchen. We spent the Christmases in matching pajamas. The kids I had named but never met. He didn't just go. He also took all of that. And in that quiet, I stopped being a bride. I turned into a ghost in my story. I almost turned away when I saw her that morning. The lady I saw in the mirror wasn't the bride I had pictured. She wasn't glowing. She didn't look bright. She appeared empty, as if someone had taken the light out of her eyes and left the shell behind. Her hair was a mess. Her skin was pallid. Her lips split. Something heavier than tears darkened her once bright eyes, resignation. I got closer, looking for anything you know. I am searching for any aspect of the girl I once was. Where was the woman who laughed so hard during romantic comedies that she cried? Where was the person who sang off-key in the car and wrote about their dreams and first kisses in a journal until the early hours of the morning? Where was the lady who thought love was worth the risk? She remained present. They buried her. Under shame. Being rejected. The crushing weight of not being selected weighed heavily on me. I put my hands on the counter to support myself. Then a thought whispered through my mind. What if this anguish doesn't lead to my death? What if it means something else? That day, I promised myself that I wouldn't forgive him yet. I decided to give it a shot. Eat one meal if you can. Get outside if you can. Think about how it feels to be a person. I started with tiny things. It was the first hot shower I had taken in days. I wore clean clothes even though they were only sweatpants. I sipped a warm and soothing cup of tea. Thereafter, I opened the window and let the sun shine on my face. It hurt, but I didn't move. Grief had taken a lot from me. However, not all of it was lost. I was still breathing. I still had time. And for the first time since I got that dreadful message, I understood something important he left me. But I was still here. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start over. People think that writing is good for your mental health. I didn't know what it meant until I sat down one night and wrote, Dear You. At first, there was just one page. It was a whisper of everything I wanted to shout. Then another page appeared. Another page followed. Some messages were full of rage words that hurt my throat as I typed them. Some were full of longing, tracing the edges of memories I wished I could still hold. I expressed heartbreak in writing, crafting shaky sentences that raised questions I knew would never find answers to. But I did write. Every night. It became second nature to me, like a judgment. This pattern persisted for a full month. I never sent them. I never planned to do that. But those were the talks I never got to have. The closure was denied to me. And at some point in that process, something unusual happened. The more I wrote to him, the more I wrote to myself. This does not refer to the part of me that is broken. But the girl who was sad, shocked, and ashamed was still there. I had a box full of letters, and my heart didn't seem as heavy when I finally stopped. One night, I put them all together, strolled to the fireplace, and watched the pages catch fire. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. I smiled. He was no longer the focus of those letters. They were the first step on my path back to who I am. They were ashes not from a departed love, but from the part of me that believed abandonment meant I was unlovable. I mumbled thank you as I saw the last piece of paper burn. It was not directed towards him. To me. I need to stay alive. Therapy was the last option. My sister suggested it. I didn't want to push myself. I walked in with the full intention of being careful. I told myself I wasn't here to cry. I didn't feel enough pain to warrant this, but pride doesn't matter when it comes to healing. It waits until you're too worn out to act like you're okay. I hardly talked in the first session. I spent the hour looking at a point on the wall and answering inquiries with shrugs and nods. But I lost it during the second session. It wasn't one enormous crash. It was a phrase that sprang out of my mouth before I could stop it. I wasn't enough for him. My voice could hardly hold the words. My therapist didn't move. She glanced at me and stated softly but firmly, "Or maybe he just wasn't good enough for you." I stopped. That thought that I hadn't failed was new to me, not comfortable, almost rude, but it stuck with me. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept hearing her say, "He wasn't enough for you." The sound echoed through the silence. I cried at the next session. The tears did not flow gracefully down my cheeks. I cried so hard that I couldn't breathe. My face turned crimson, and I shook. She let me do it. I came back week after week. I felt a bit better each time I left, sometimes worn out, sometimes upset, sometimes hopeful. We talked about trends, about value. We discussed the narratives I've been telling myself since my childhood. We addressed the feelings of humiliation and abandonment that were unrelated to him, but entirely connected to my own experiences. It wasn't about getting rid of the agony. It was about figuring out where it came from and then giving it a name. That couch was where I went to confess. That couch served as my sanctuary from the world. It served as my classroom. And in the end, it became my anchor. The treatment did not lead to my recovery, but it made me remember that I was never broken in the first place. At first, I didn't know. The moment passed by effortlessly. It was the middle of the week. It was the late afternoon. I took my favorite book to a cafe close to the park. I got chamomile tea without sugar and sat in a spot by the window. I wasn't putting on a show for anyone. I wasn't attempting to keep myself busy. I was just there. I stopped halfway through a chapter. It struck me. I hadn't thought about him all day. Not his name, not his face. The point was lost. The pain didn't bother me. I was shocked by how completely absent it was. It was as if you've lost a tooth and your tongue persistently searches for the hole. Instead of emptiness, I sensed serenity. And then I smiled. I didn't stop caring, but I was starting to care about something else more myself. Healing didn't come in a big wave. It came in small amounts. He prefers to take deep breaths during the calm mornings. Taking big breaths. In normal times, that didn't have anything to do with him. I began to observe how sunshine made brick walls look. The sound of leaves grazing the ground filled my ears. I found solace in the solitude of my surroundings. A barista's joke made me burst into laughter. Without shoes, I danced in my apartment to a song I used to adore. I started making plans for my calendar that had nothing to do with avoiding suffering and everything to do with finding joy again. I recognized at that point that the story was no longer about the man who left me. It was about the woman who stayed. Me. Daniel was his name. We met through friends at a gaming night that I almost didn't go to. I remember getting there late with damp hair from the shower and a heart that was still wary from the carnage behind me. He smiled as if he didn't have to go anyplace else right away. He didn't put forth a lot of effort. He didn't ask questions that were too personal. He only listened. We ran into each other again and again over the weeks. At first, I stayed away from them emotionally. I wasn't ready to give up the delicate parts that I had just started to put back together. But Daniel didn't press. He didn't need me to be prepared. He just wanted me to be honest. We went for a walk by the river one night after dinner. The stars were bright in the sky and the air was chilly, and I told him everything. I told him about the dress that was constantly hanging on the hanger. I told him about the silence that followed the text. The humiliation felt like a second skin. He didn't move. He didn't hurry to break the stillness. He didn't feel sorry for me. He didn't say that I was better off or that everything happens for a reason. He merely stretched out and took my hand. And with that simple gesture, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something more tranquil. Honor. Kindness. He showed a readiness to see me without trying to change me. That night when we said goodbye, he looked at me and said, "You don't owe me your past, but if you ever want someone to help you move forward, I'm here." And for the first time since everything went wrong, I thought that maybe, just maybe, I could let someone walk next to me again. It had been a year. I spent a full year healing, hurting, growing, asking questions, and evolving. I didn't mean to go back to the chapel, but I had to do it. I wasn't looking for answers. I didn't do it for a sense of closure. The purpose was simply to be present. The doors creaked open just like they did that day. The smell of ancient hymnals and wood polish permeated the air. The quiet was familiar, but it didn't feel mean anymore. It felt holy. This time I walked down the aisle more slowly. The dress didn't dictate the pace, but every step was a step back. This was the moment when my world fell apart. But this was also the location where I could stand again entirely. I got to the altar. No flowers, no music, no people. Only me. I stood there letting the light hit my face, and I took in the silence. I allowed the past to speak to me, not to scare me, but to remind me. This region was no longer his. It was mine. I was not the abandoned bride. I wasn't the victim of a story that ended too soon. I was a woman who endured hardships and remained unaffected. I was a woman who faced the most challenging period of her life and remained unflinching. I sat in the front row and shut my eyes. I didn't disregard the pain, yet I honored the resilience it demonstrated. Before, I thought vows were reserved for weddings. Stepping in front of someone else and promising to be there forever is a significant commitment. But some commitments should only be made in private, after the silence. The sound of closings filled the air. I started a fresh journal and wrote vows to myself at the top of the page. I didn't hurry. I didn't strive to write poetry. I was honest. I promised myself that I would never ask for love again. I promised myself that I would never give up my comfort for someone else's. I committed to treating my heart with sanctity and not discarding it. I promised myself that I would talk even when my voice shakes, to take a break when I'm fatigued, to cry without feeling bad. I committed to engaging in deep laughter, experiencing profound love, and taking necessary breaks when needed. I promised myself that I would be the home I was looking for. This is what I wrote last. I no longer wait for others to choose me. I pick myself. As the candle next to me flickered and burned down, I felt something settle deep inside me. It wasn't closure or certainty, but calm. Occasionally, the promise you make to yourself is the most essential one you'll ever make. It represents the person who has overcome everything you believed was impossible. You. Being left at the altar didn't mean the end of my story. The story twist changed everything. Not because it broke me, but because it made me start over. I didn't find love with someone else. I found it in the quiet times when I choose to be happy instead of sad. In the pages of a diary. In the heat of a cup of tea. In the sound of my own laughing coming back after months of silence. I used to think that a happy ending meant that someone would come in and save you. But now I know. The real win is keeping yourself safe. So if you've ever been left abandoned, broken, or forgotten, I hope you remember this. You are not what someone else chooses to leave. You are what stays and what rises. And sometimes the best love story you can create is the one you write with yourself.